You've been kidding me. All of a sudden, they played a perfect fourth quarter after playing pretty lousy three quarters.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to call the City Council meeting to order and ask you to all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sally, if you could help me with the roll call, please.
Sure. Alderperson Henry. Here. Alderperson Schaefer.
Here.
Alderperson Valdy.
Valdy, and I am here.
Valdy.
That's all right.
Thank you. Alderperson Den.
Here.
Alderperson Grimmer.
Here.
Alderperson Price.
Here.
Alderperson Eicher.
Here.
Mayor Atwell.
Present.
Tom Hafner.
Here.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, approval of minutes of November 21st, 2022.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, right to it. Number 5, City of Delafield citizens' comments. Who would like to make a comment about anything on or off the agenda? Come on up. We go by whoever raised their hands first. She beat you, so she gets to go. Well, we'll have you go next.
We're not coordinated.
And if each of you could give us your name and address when you come up, Tally would appreciate it.
Okay, I'm Nancy Kies, and I live at 1526 Milwaukee Street.
Nancy, excuse me, could you spell your last name, please?
Kies. Okay. So, it was kind of by a coincidence that I found out that Milwaukee Street was going to be on the agenda tonight, and it happened to be the exact same day that I had an issue on Milwaukee Street. So instead of coming and doing my usual complaining about Milwaukee Street, I did research. I have had 4 incidences in the last 10 months, well, maybe more, that are not based on my own opinion about if somebody was going slow or fast or what they were doing. On July 21st in 2021, so that's more than a year ago, I had a car pass me, it's a double yellow, in front of my house at 1526 in the left-hand lane. Speed limit's 25. I was driving slow because I decided to go straight from the west to look at my front yard, which I had done some work on. The person passed me in the left-hand lane, and I followed them down Milwaukee Street at 40 miles an hour. When we got to the corner on Genesee, she opened her window and gave me the naughty finger, because obviously I was in the wrong, I was speeding. Okay. The second thing that happened within this last several months was an official police vehicle also passed me in the left-hand lane, which I would not complain about, but he didn't speed up and turn on a light and go anywhere. He just got ahead of me and went wherever, up to 83. The third time, I was passed on the right, which is just almost impossible. If you know at all, after you pass Fishbones, you have about that much space or a driveway. And this was food delivery kid. And I thought, well, I'll follow him to his delivery, and I'll just give him a nice warning and say, I'm not going to turn you in, but you should know the next time you do it, I will. And as he approached Genesee Street, he made a very quick right-hand turn without stopping and went zooming up C. So I gave up on that, and I went back and I called his boss and complained. If he lost his job, I'm sorry. Then, on October 31st, I was going west on Milwaukee Street. I was maybe coming from downtown, was going to 2nd Street, I don't really remember. And there again, I got passed in the left-hand lane. And there again, that woman was driving a little more than 25 or 30 because I also followed her to the stop sign at the corner by the hotel. I immediately contacted all my friends to let them know this would be on the agenda tonight, because we live with this kind of stuff every day. We have trouble getting out onto the road. We have trouble getting hit by cars. We get tailgated, people on our rear end. Like if we'd have to stop, we will be hit. I'm afraid to cross the street. I know I cross illegally. I go from my driveway to Anderson's. Okay, fine. If you go to the corner, it doesn't make any difference. Nobody stops for those stop signs. One neighbor on First Street refuses to turn from Milwaukee onto her street. It's dangerous. So if you want to say what we should do or what we can do or what should be done, you need to protect us. I mean, even if you want it to be a connector street and have all of everybody drive that way, that's fine. But we are not safe there, and I think it's the obligation of the city to do something about it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sir, you'd like to be next?
Thank you, Nancy.
My name is Jim Casanova. My wife and I moved to Delafield about 4.5 years ago. Happy that we did. And
Sir,
yes.
could you spell your last name and give
Oh.
me your address, please?
Yeah, I was getting to the address, but the last name is Casanova, and the address is 1515 Milwaukee Street. Okay. I guess like the other people here, I'm here to ask for some help anyway. It's in reference to traffic behavior on Milwaukee Street. And although many people may try to drive at least vaguely near the speed limit on Milwaukee Street, some certainly do not. Some leave the stop signs at Milwaukee and Main like they were shot out of a cannon. If you live on this street, you see a lot of craziness every day. The usual 25-mile-per-hour signs have become, I think, like elevator music for many people, and they really don't get drivers' attention anymore. The problem is especially noticeable, I think, on the stretch of Milwaukee Street between Main and Garrison Court. This is the spot where many families live very literally within feet of the traffic. This is also the section of the street that handles both Milwaukee and Main Street traffic. People live and walk and jog and bike and trick or treat along Milwaukee Street. Someone will get hurt here, it's inevitable. A few years ago, I came very close to being hit in my own front yard. On our part of Milwaukee Street, we all live in intimate contact with the problem. I think that when citizens living in a neighborhood say they have a problem, that should be acknowledged and some kind of help should be offered. No one's looking for or expecting a miracle. Milwaukee Street's a busy street. We all know that. But we are hoping that something can be tried besides just a few generic 25-mile-an-hour signs. We do not and cannot expect our police to be here all the time. They have other things to do, and I think they do them well. What might help us is something to further remind drivers who frankly are thinking of other things to take the speed limit seriously and to drive more carefully. Maybe signs saying speed limit strictly enforced would get some people's attention. Or maybe something else entirely. Some have suggested a lower speed limit for a trial period. Maybe a committee of local citizens and officials could explore the situation. There's a lot of possibilities, I think. And in any case, I think that something should be tried. It doesn't have to cost much. I think it's mainly a matter of trying to get drivers' attention. I don't think we have their attention. Finally, I would just point out that Milwaukee Street is still essentially a residential neighborhood. People are still more important than cars and trucks and their movement. I appreciate the chance to talk to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the comments. Anybody else? Come on up. Oh, right there.
My name is Fran Bills, B-I-L-L-S.
Can you please speak into the microphone so they can hear you on TV?
Fran Bills, and I live at 1522 Milwaukee Street. Okay. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to share our concerns with you tonight. The speeding is a real issue. People who live on the north side of Milwaukee Street have to back out into Milwaukee Street, and it's some days really impossible for them and very dangerous. Those of us on the south side trying to cross to reach our lake access, you're taking your life in your hands. As you've already heard, people tend not to stop at the stop sign. You can hear people blaring their horns at each other at that three-way stop. It's very dangerous. I think that within the next 2 years, the situation is going to get far worse. Once the grain is finished, once a development at St. John's Northwestern Academy is finished, there's going to be tremendous amount of traffic coming down Milwaukee Street. That will slow people down, but it will be all that much more difficult for those on the north side to try and back out into that traffic. Milwaukee Street is apparently a very main and important street for our emergency vehicles. Several times a day you can hear them screaming down the street. I'm assuming that they have chosen the most appropriate and fastest route to the emergency they're to go to. Once it's bumper to bumper, because of all that development, I don't know how emergency vehicles are going to get down, because there really is not, shoulder room for people to pull over. Big concern, I think. Speed bumps would be nice, but I think with all the emergency vehicles, I don't know how realistic that is. And also I've been told that the designation of Milwaukee Street is such that speed bumps, can't be done. I thought it would be great to have one of these cameras, catches people speeding, takes a picture of their license plate. However, our state legislature has joined several other states, and that is illegal in Wisconsin. Heavens forbid we should catch people breaking the law. Perhaps what we need, especially considering that once the grain is completed, the development in St. John's is completed, lots more traffic, perhaps a committee to research the possibility of some sort of a bypass. The service road ends along 94 before it really reaches town. If we somehow had some sort of way to siphon traffic headed for downtown away from the residential Milwaukee Street, I wish that this had almost been explored when we, had the grain development and St. John's, because there's going to be a tremendous amount of traffic coming into town. So that's what I would, and the other thing in the meantime, maybe getting really serious about ticketing people. You know how the IRS works, and somebody gets audited and they tell all their neighbors, because IRS can't audit all of us. And maybe if we, got serious and handed out a lot more tickets, people would suddenly be, no, don't go 26 on Milwaukee Street because you're going to get a big fat ticket. But thank you for listening to our comments. It is a real concern. Very afraid that someone is going to be seriously hurt, and it would be nice if we didn't wait till that happens before we do something significant. Thanks again for listening to our concerns.
Thank you for the comments. Who'd like to be next? Come on up.
Hello. My name is Laura Olson, Olson, and I live at 1504 Milwaukee Street. And we've moved in. We moved here. My husband and I moved here about 5 years ago, and we love Delafield. We just love the city. We love the people. We love our neighbors. We love the neighborhood, the culture. Everything is. We love the police department. I just want to say, I don't find fault with the police. If you drive on Milwaukee Street, you will see that almost every resident has put up a slow down sign of their own. We have a slow down sign. It seems unusual to me that you would have to put down put your own speed limit signs up or your own slow down signs. So the evidence is that people are just speeding on Milwaukee Street. We live at the corner. We own our house, and then we own our lot next door, and both properties have lake access across the street. So we do have to go across the street for the fun. We also maintain the property across the street, and part of the problem is my husband has to drive his lawnmower across Milwaukee Street, and we use the crosswalks. But the crosswalk is such an unusual design at Milwaukee and Main, where it comes in like a Y. I'm not sure who designed it, and I don't want to blame anyone here, but I'm guessing it was a long time ago. Right now, you have a crosswalk on half of the street, and then you have to stop in the middle, and the other side of the street going west has no stop sign. So you're in half of a crosswalk and you stand there. So we have grandchildren that we take down to the lake, or we take the lawnmower to the lake, and we have to stop in the middle of the street because half of the traffic doesn't stop. For whatever reason, someone thought it was a good idea just to let them go straight through. So you're standing in the crosswalk. Some of the people do stop and they wave you past, but then you don't know if people behind them are going to come around and ignore the fact that they've stopped. So the design is not apropos. I'm guessing if anything could be fixed, maybe to make it a total crosswalk where you could walk from one side of the street to the other side of the street without gathering in the middle. I've had, we take our dog out for a walk, and I see other people too, because a lot of people do walk their dogs from one side of Milwaukee Street up to the bike trail. First Street is the way to get to the bike trail, and you have to cross Milwaukee and Main. Main is also one of those situations where it's a half of a crosswalk. You get into the middle of the street and then you're stuck, basically because the other cars are coming down without stopping. So we'll have the dog, we'll have 3 children. We're all standing in the middle of the street because some of the cars have stopped, but the cars going west do not stop. So the design is peculiar. The speed limit, again, I think the police have done their best. They've sat there on the corner. They inevitably find people speeding, but you can't be there 24/7. So I'm guessing besides one crosswalk with perhaps stop signs, someone could suggest making a few more crosswalks. Down near Fishbones, there's no crosswalk. There might be a half, but it doesn't have a stop sign, so no one stops. So those are my suggestions, but I think long-term, I agree, a frontage road would be faster. Milwaukee Street is not a fast road. If you get a few cars on there, and I am assuming there will be more in the future, it's going to be so slow that you can't pass. There's nowhere to pass. And if you had an emergency vehicle, they would just be stuck. So I'm guessing long-term goals would be helpful to everyone. But thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you for the comments. Come on up, ma'am.
My name is Jean Casanova, Casanova, at 1515 Milwaukee Street. As my husband said, we did move here 4 years ago, and we knew that we were buying a house on a busy street. And I was okay with that. I was pretty sure we could keep the grandkids in line and keep them out of the street. But what I wasn't prepared for was for the drivers to come into our yard. And what happened was, 2 doors down from us, a car veered off, went through one yard, went and hit a garage next door to that, went over our retaining wall, and then into a 4th neighbor on the other side of us. It's pretty scary. This isn't a theoretical problem to us. It's something that we live with and worry about every day. Safety is really the issue, and I guess I feel like we're really lucky that no one has gotten injured before. What I would urge, I don't think you're going to solve the problem sitting right here, and we've given you a lot of ideas, but I think it's going to take some time and some study to arrive at some solutions. And I guess I would support what other people have said about forming a committee, one that I hope would include some citizens to really study the problem. We don't know what's all possible. We have suggestions, but we really need, I think, to take some time and look at the issue before someone gets hurt or killed.
Great, thank you for the comments.
Thank you.
Anybody else tonight? Anybody else? Come on up.
Susie Thompson, it's Susie, 700 Milwaukee Street. As most of you up here know, my husband Alan and I live 2 blocks from City Hall on the corner of Milwaukee and Oneida. We, of course, knew that that's a busy road. We loved, when we bought it in May of 2017, that the sidewalk was in. We didn't have to go through that construction. We did go through the construction of Oneida Street, which was painful but turned out absolutely phenomenal. So that looks good. The problem that we have in the downtown area, and because we have windows, my home office looks out onto the street, we notice it's local people as well as visitors. So it's not just the visitors, it's both. Due speed. Coming out of Genesee, going eastbound. I can't believe that they can get going as fast as they do. But the sidewalk that goes from the corner of our house across the street onto the downtown sidewalks, which would be the south side of the intersection of Milwaukee and Oneida, it is marked as a sidewalk, and very clearly, at least during the day, you can see it very clearly. But if you want to go across Milwaukee Street, to go from the southwest corner to the northwest corner, going northbound there, you have cars parked to your west in front of the yellow 2-story building. It does block, in all fairness to drivers, it does block their view of pedestrians in the crosswalk. I have been noticing, like, how far do we have to be in the crosswalk till they see us? Literally 5 to 6 foot into the crosswalk until they see that we're even there, and by that time, they've got their foot on the gas. Sometimes they're planning on making the turn onto Oneida, and then they want to turn, and we're in the crosswalk, and they hit the brakes, and the people behind them almost hit them. One lady, who was a visitor, I believe, stopped, and this just in the last 2 weeks. She was going to go eastbound. She went forward and realized we were there, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't see you." And she literally did a U-turn in American Classics parking area and turned around and pulled over to the side, and she rolled down her window. She said, "Ma'am, I have to tell you, I'm sorry I didn't see you." She said, "There should be pedestrian signs there. I did not recognize that that was a crosswalk, and I did not expect anybody to be coming out of nowhere." So I crossed the street, and I talked to her for a minute. She said, "Really, if you have those yellow signs that show people could be crossing right here, it would really help." I think of a lot of the possibilities that are open to us, we do need to consider those more. However, one on Genesee, north of the river, got plowed down just a couple months ago. Somebody ran over the stop sign, totally plowed it down. I couldn't believe it. And God bless DPW, they had it up literally the same day that it got plowed over. So that's not 100% of the answer, I realize. And I know all of you are challenged with a difficult problem on how do we control traffic. So whatever you can figure out, yes, rock on.
Great, thank you for the comments. Anyone else? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. Seeing nothing on the consent agenda, we will skip number 6 and go right into number 7, boards, committees, and commission reports. Nothing for licenses, I imagine. B, Planning Commission, Mr. Eicher.
Yeah, we did have a meeting since our last council meeting, and I've got a few items. I'll just go down quickly, and because I'm going quick doesn't mean they're not important. I'm just trying to save everyone time. And these are things that a lot of them have public hearings coming up associated with them. So just to put people on notice. One of them was Rustic Manor on 83, almost directly west of Culvers, maybe a little south of there. But they were approved a long time ago, and they went through more hoops than anyone on this serving in any city capacity has gone through. They could probably teach a class on civics. But as far as getting approval for their operation, they were operating under the bed and breakfast provision. And they have approached the city to update their conditional use permit and introduce a new ordinance update regarding conditional uses for event venues. They've been very successful so far and mainly compatible with the neighborhood. So there'll be a public hearing scheduled to update our public our ordinances regarding conditional use permits for public venues or event venues specific to agricultural land, which they are on. And so look for those details. It's very restrictive. There's very few places in the city where this could apply, but look for that coming up. Also, there was if you've noticed, the Kowalski's Kitchen across the street from Mazatlan went through a big renovation. Mixed feelings about exactly how that fits in with the historic nature of downtown, but they kept the same roof lines, updated look, and they looked for some updated signage, and that was approved with some restrictions moving forward. Also, 1807 Negawicka Road, you'll know it as the former Seven Seas restaurant. They're moving ahead. You haven't heard about them a long time, but they are actually doing lots of work, and they're finalizing some details, and we updated, in the Plan Commission, we approved a new site plan to streamline some of their roofing, move some mechanicals around, engage in their neighbors to make sure that it was compatible with them, and associated with the noise and lighting and landscaping, so that's all going forward. At least approved, they need to meet some requirements. Hendricks Properties at St. John's campus, the subdivision that's going between existing campus buildings and to the north, just west of Genesee Street. We set up public hearing for their rezoning proposal going from public institutional to R4 zoning. They were asking for higher density, they got lower density than they asked for. They actually submitted one of the more comprehensive water studies that we've seen in a long time. As far as the impact on neighbors, it actually provides lots of good advice for people with shallow wells in the area. So there's a public hearing and rezoning proposed for that as well coming up. So we'll be seeing a lot of these coming to for our approval at council level as well. Also 505 Lapham Peak Road, which is neighborhood surrounding American Legion. There's a preliminary proposal for a 29-family subdivision around there that has some rather creative ideas about how to kind of change what looked like initial plans for roads cutting through to do some more traffic calming and tree preservation ideas. And so that they got some input from the Plan Commission, so that's in the early stages, but that'll be coming forward as well. And let's see here. Nothing minor. All the discussions that we've been working on for the Plan Commission over the past almost year, since submitted by the Economic Development Committee regarding properties east or west of 83, north and south of the Bark River. Huge plots of undeveloped land, mostly farmland. Most, if not all of it, abuts residential neighborhoods. We received lots of input, and on the south portion of that, so Bark River South, near Oak Brook Church, do I have that name right? I think so.
Oakwood Church.
Oakwood?
Yeah.
Okay. Oakwood Church, near the Frisbee Golf Course and the dog walking area. There's a line of delineation that's proposed for update to the land use plan for us to consider moving forward, to delineate strictly lower density residential abutting the folks on Fair Oaks Lane and Hirschman Lane, and then perhaps introducing commercial uses closer to 83. And on the north side of the river, west of 83, where there was discussion of possible light industrial commercial uses. At the end of the day, with all of the conflicting inputs that we had as far as what's in the best interest of the city and all the people that are part of the city, we decided to officially dismiss that as any kind of update we're going to consider in the near future. So that's going to stay ag until someone comes up with a great idea that we can figure out. So that's my update for Plan Commission. Our next meeting is on December 21st. Any questions?
It was a busy meeting.
It was a busy meeting. We've been pushing the 11 o'clock limits almost for the past 6 months. So, but to make more light of it, the overall thought on the area north of the Bark River, west of 83, we did not declare it a defeat that we can come up with a way to change our land use plan. We just declared it a victory that we listened to everybody and came up with the current plan. Sounds good. So that's all I had.
No questions? That was a lot of stuff. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Eicher.
Most of it we'll see again. It'll come to us.
That's true. That's true. Most of them have 2 or 3 meetings to go. Okay, 7C, Lake Welfare Committee, Mr. Price.
We meet next Wednesday.
Thank you.
No report.
D, Park and Rec, Mr. Schaefer.
We accepted the retirement of Dave Brabson from Park and Rec after 17 years of service. And we are working with the Arts Foundation on scheduling. They've started to schedule acts for the Liberty Park 2023 Summer Entertainment Series. And we're also coordinating that with Chamber of Commerce to make sure that there's no overlap or conflicts with their events. So that's in process. That's all.
Who's officially in charge of renting the tent?
So I've communicated with Mark and Jim Ryer to let me know as soon as possible when we're ready to rent the tent, and I will coordinate that when we are ready to do so. I've asked that I'd like to make arrangements in January with the tent company to make sure we're well ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think the short answer is Tom, but the ball's in my court, and I'm working with the Arts Foundation on defining the exact dates, that we would want that. So depending on what acts and when they can schedule, we'll determine exactly how long we need the tent, and where in the summer we want to slot that. So.
Yeah, my understanding from Jim Ryer is we're kind of leaning towards something in middle June to late August.
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I bring it up is because many of these acts repeat every year, so they've already booked their stuff. They booked it last June, right? So it's very important that we at least reach out to check availability, that we're even talking about a tent that they have, first of all, that's not already committed. And two, the sooner you can give them a date range and get it reserved, the better, because I just want to be conscious of availability of the tent, that when we do it timely to reserve it.
Understood. Yeah, and the Arts Foundation understands that as well, so we'll be in touch ASAP.
Sounds good, thank you.
I have a question regarding people who serve on committees, long or short. Do we do anything to say thanks? Or is there, I know in the past, like when people have served on common council or plan commission or something, when they've left, they've these cute little plaques or something. I'm just wondering, is there a little something we might want to do or say. It's awful long time and a lot of service. And I don't know, just throwing that out there because, yeah, that's a long time.
You know, to date, we haven't done anything. Oftentimes it's, like I just learned on Friday that Dave was resigning from Park and Rec, so it's oftentimes real short notice. For lack of a better excuse, we just haven't done anything unless we get more advance notice of a long-time person leaving.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, like 100 years ago when I was working my way through school, one of my many jobs, believe it or not, was working in a radio station. And I wasn't there all that long, but when I left, I got this really cool plaque, like I had done something important, and it was kind of neat. And I know that was the dark ages, but I always think it's kind of nice, especially for folks who maybe we can even come up with an idea like 5 years or whatever, not someone who serves a few months and bolts, but, you know, it's just a thought. I don't, you know, it's not an agenda item, but it just occurred to me when you were reading that. I don't know. He's done quite a lot of service. There's a lot of really good people, really smart, good people who devote a lot of time for free to this community. And,
Yeah. I know often, I'll typically reach out with an email or a phone call or something and thank the people for what that's worth. But that'd be a good idea to develop a formal policy with regards to recognition of volunteers and employees and whatnot.
You guys are in trouble when I retire in June, I'm just saying. I'm going to be really bothersome.
Good.
Does that mean you can help out more? Committees?
More committees?
Yep, I'll work more.
Alrighty, sounds good. Okay, we'll move on to E, Public Works. Mr. Grimmer.
No meeting, no report. Next meeting is on Wednesday.
Sounds good. F, Delahart, Mr. Iker.
We had our first meeting with both Rose as well as Erica Buchberger, our new financial director. So she's being onboarded as well as a couple new committee members. So things are moving along as planned for Delahart. And we've got, like I said, I'll have an update early next year with a more formal report on what our new plant upgrade is all about.
So is Rose still working?
Yes, she's at least going to be there for our Christmas party coming up. So she's
Kind of through the end of the year, kind of, sort of?
There's not, it's a little squishy.
Yeah,
it
has been.
She's been wonderfully flexible in making sure that she's leaving her baby in good hands.
Good.
So it's good.
All right, G, Police Commission, Ms. Faldy.
No meeting, no report.
Thank you much. H, Library Board, Ms. Henry.
No meeting, no report.
There we go. I, Zoning Board of Appeals, not aware of any. J, Promotion and Tourism Commission, Mr. Schaefer.
And no meeting, no report.
Thank you much. K, Lake Country Fire and Rescue Commission. Not aware of any. L, Lake Country Fire and Rescue Board, Mr. Grimmer.
Okay, I've got several things here. Interrupt me if you have questions along the way. I wanted to update the council on year-to-date budgeting. Our revenues are down, our salary expenses up. Because we have seen less, because our staffing has obviously been a challenge. The Lake Country Fire and Rescue is not able to perform interfacility transfers, which is a source of revenue for them, for us. And we're down between 100 and 120 runs this year, causing a little bit of a hole in the budget in terms of revenue. In terms of expense, because we have staffing challenges, we have staff that's paid $30 to $45 filling shifts where we previously had $15 to $20 shifts being filled. Having said all that, we still anticipate being in the black by year end, but I did want to alert the council to to those. The second thing is we did discuss and debate a fee increase. We are increasing fees for our billing. We are not differentiating between resident and non-resident in terms of essentially what would be considered a copay. Everyone, resident or non-resident, is being treated the same.
Is that how we've always done it?
Correct. We annually have, in my tenure, have annually increased fees. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've been more aggressive in those increases, and now we are one of the top. We're one of the top departments in the area in terms of what we charge.
I have kind of a question about the fees, because we've had a couple of citizens' comments before about how they've never been charged fees before, and is that something that's new, or
No.
why would they be surprised by the
They shouldn't be
fees
surprised
recently?
by that, to my knowledge. That when you don't transport someone to the hospital, there's nothing that you can bill for. And so if you call because someone fell, Lake Country Fire and Rescue makes money off the transport. They don't make money off of not transporting.
Okay.
But I can ask the chief just to clarify.
I thought somebody had
Yeah,
said
they
there was
said
a
that they were-
$200 charge,
Yeah.
and
seemed
I
odd.
believe it was a fall, and they were not transported.
Correct.
If I'm remembering that correctly,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
which I'm assuming has always been there, but.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe an insurance used to pick up the tab and it doesn't anymore or what, but yeah, I thought the same thing when I heard that. I thought, oh, I just assumed if you weren't transported, you would get charged.
I'll clarify with the chief on non-transport charges.
Okay.
We did, the board did vote to allow automatic dues deduction for the Lake Country Fire and Rescue unions. That was not negotiated during union negotiations, that the fire department would automatically deduct those dues. And so the union came back with that request, and that was granted with everyone in favor except one person. The number 5, the department now has a canine support dog. One of our new hires, the assistant chief, has a dog that was previously trained by his former employer, who invested a significant amount of money training this dog to be a therapy dog. And so now that dog is a therapy dog at Lake Country Fire and Rescue. And if there are public outreach and things like that, you might see that dog wandering around, but there is no expense for the city.
What kind of dog?
It's a therapy dog. I don't know what kind of breed.
It's not a Dalmatian?
No, it might be. I didn't ask. I should.
It's not a Dalmatian, right?
It's not a Dalmatian. I don't know. Maybe it is.
Nice.
Maybe it is.
I was just curious, really.
Sure. It was quite the expense to train the dog. I
They
was
are, yeah.
amazed at the price.
Do you know what organization did the training?
I do.
Got experience with some, just curious which.
It was the former employer for, it was Western Lakes, apparently.
But the training organization?
I don't know
Is
the
it,
training organization.
Okay.
No.
Just curious.
I could find that out, though.
Matt, was there discussion that the automatic dues deduction should have been collectively bargained?
There was. Number 6, merit increases were 2% for the represented employees, union employees, and 3% for non-represented employees. And number 7, There were 15 brownout days in November, according to the chief. And that is it. Any other questions, concerns?
Thank you for the update.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go on to M, Deer Management Committee, Ms. Henry.
No meeting, no report.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're on to 8A, unfinished business. Update and possible discussion regarding Lake Country Fire and Rescue funding, fire fee development, and possible referendum for budget years 2024 through 2026.
Yeah, just a brief update. We did meet, the administrators of the 7-member municipalities met with the fire chief last week to continue the discussion of coming up with a universal fire fee that's equivalent for all 7-member municipalities. That fee system is well developed now. It does result in the city of Delafield's total cost, when you look at the out year of 2026 for the staffing plan, to be about 30% less than what we would pay under the current IMA, intermunicipal agreement. For the first time, we did hear some reluctance from the municipalities who would pay more under that plan. Those would primarily be the town of Genesee and the village of Wales, and the town of Delafield would be a little bit more. And so Matt will be meeting with the governing bodies of those 3 entities to talk through the logistics, the rationale for an equivalent fee. And those meetings are going to be happening tonight at the Village of Wales, and then on the 12th in the town of Genesee, and the 13th in the town of Delafield. And the administrators are getting back together again on December 20th to review the feedback that the chief gets from those 3 communities and see where we go from there. I have expressed that I thought it's likely that if we are able to get this universal fee, that the city of Delafield may likely be willing to do so without a referendum. And the town of Delafield has responded to that, saying that they would likely not do a referendum then also, because they don't want to be the only municipality not doing a referendum. So that's where things stand right now. It is looking like if we don't accomplish the universal fee and the city does want to go to a referendum, it's likely not going to be able to happen in April. There's too much time remaining to work on the universal fee, and we're not going to have an answer on that in time for finalizing a question by January 16th for the April ballot. Any questions on that, or any direction that the council would like to give me as we move forward?
Well, just correct me if I'm wrong. I thought somebody told me we will not have a November election this year. And so if we do...
Next year?
Or next year?
Correct.
So that if we did go to referendum, chose to go to referendum, and we missed the April window, then we'd have to have a special election.
Special election, my understanding is that special election could be held in August or November, but it would be an election just for the referendum, standalone.
And what's the cost of a standalone?
I would have to get an exact number from Molly, but the number I've heard in the past is from past clerks has been like around $5,000, so that number's probably a little bit higher now.
Okay.
And so to clarify, when you say that there's a possibility that just the sketched out universal plan would represent a 30% reduction in the city's contribution, that's not saying that there's going to be a 30% pay decrease in the services provided, the cost of services provided. That's the share of Delafield relative to the other 6 municipalities in the proposed somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60% increase in fees, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And going into the agreement that brought on the 4 new member municipalities, we were dealing with constraints with regards to levy limits on how much those municipalities could increase their budget to join LCFR. We were dealing with the practical limits that they were unlikely to join us if their costs went up significantly, and the reality that even if they came on board paying what they were, approximately what they're currently paying, it was of benefit to the 3 communities. But that's why we established the based portion of the funding formula. And that base portion was basically based on what you were paying at the time LCFR 7 was created, even though it was not an equal distribution of the base portion of the fee. And so now if we do this, the cost would be equalized just based on how many houses you have in your community and how many commercial businesses you have in your community and how big those commercial businesses are.
And point of clarification, when we entered into the LCFR 7, did we renew the contract as though we started over and created a new entity so that all the deadlines and mandates for how long you needed to be bound by the contract terms all renewed for the 5 and 7 year terms for being members and whether or not you had the ability to exit?
So I believe the terms were reestablished as a new 5-year term, but I would need to do a review and probably seek a legal review of that if we want to get into the specifics of that.
Okay. And the last last thing, this has been on my mind a while. But so as far as direction, just like we did with the referendum that we entered into a couple years ago with the city, we did our best to come up with a very, very concise, easily digestible financial situation statement, and with or without consequences of passing a referendum, or even if we don't go to referendum, I think we need it to establish the point to the taxpayers what any kind of update or change would mean. So that's the goal I would have for the administrators of the different municipalities to get together, is to give us something that's maybe a 1-page, 2-sided, here's what's going on, here's why we need it, whether it's a referendum or not. I would encourage everyone to get that kind of data that's auditable, that you can point to actual specifics with links so that we could, people that are concerned or the born skeptics in all of us would be able to get reaffirmation of the decision that this is money well spent.
Yeah, let me also say that although we know right now what Lake Country Fire and Rescue Board has approved for a 2024, 2025, and 2026 budget, if we go to this universal fee system and we establish what the fee is for 2024, that does not necessarily mean that the communities need to follow the step plan that the fire board has outlined right now. We could hire 7 new firefighters next year and find out that that works well and that we don't want to hire another 7 or 8 the following year. Maybe instead of 7 or 8, we decide we want to hire 2. So we're not bound to follow the projected budgets from the Lake Country Fire Board. And I know the town of Delafield, for one, is really looking to monitor how the incremental increases improve service and identify if we get to a satisfactory level, not increasing the budget as significantly as what is currently being discussed. And as we get to that fee, every single community would essentially have veto power and could...
Each year?
Every single year. The way the intermunicipal agreement is written, first of all, on the fire board, one of each community's representative has to approve the budget there, and then each governing body has to have a majority of people that approve the budget. And if that can't be accomplished, LCFR's budget reverts to the previous year.
But we don't have an agreement that says that yet, but we will.
We don't?
No, the IMA has to be rewritten, correct?
No, it currently says that it needs a vote from every community, and if you don't get every community on board, it reverts. But it would need to get rewritten if
And
we're
that needs to
changing.
stay in there, I guess is my point.
Yeah, it would need to get rewritten to change the allocation of costs to the different communities. Well, it would no longer allocate costs to communities, it would allocate costs to rooftops.
All right, any other questions? Right, we'll move on. Okay, 9A, Mayor's Report. A, discussion possible action on the following items. A1, accept the resignation of Dave Brapson from the Park and Rec Commission and the Tree Board. And as Jackie mentioned, I'd like to thank Dave for his 17 years of service. He did a great job, and he was ready to have a younger person move in that had kids, and so that's what you'll find on item 2. So if I could get a motion to accept Dave Brapson's resignation, we'll move on.
I'll move to accept Dave's resignation from Park and Rec.
Second.
Great, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Thanks, Dave.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, 2, confirm appointment of Gloria Tranasek to the citizen member position on the Park and Rec Commission and Tree Board vacated by Dave Brapson. Term to expire April 2024. So Gloria lives very close to Fireman's Park, which is the park Dave was in charge of. She has 3 kids between like 4 and 7 and uses the park all the time. And she's also a member of the military. So I think she'll do a really good job serving her fellow citizens.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. All right, thank you. We'll move on to 10, new business. A, discussion possible action regarding an underground electric distribution easement between the City of Delafield grantor and Wisconsin Electric Power Company grantee on parcel identification number DLC 07939870002 for the purpose of providing necessary electric facilities in the Hendricks Commercial Properties, The Grain, development at 705 Genesee Street for good and valuable consideration of $2,772 payable to the City of Delafield. Mr. Hafner.
Yeah, both items number 10A and 10B are easements that We Energies is requesting from the City of Delafield. And like the agenda items say, it is for the purposes of feeding the grain development for Hendricks. These easements are immediately behind the sidewalk along Main Street from approximately the midpoint of the municipal parking lot to just west of the driveway that goes into the Fish Hatchery Sports Complex parking area. I was able to negotiate compensation at $12 per lineal foot for the easement areas. And with that, I would entertain any questions on those easements and recommend approval.
Is there a motion for A and or B?
I'll make a motion to approve 10A and 10B.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you much. We'll move on to C, discussion and possible action regarding changing benefit withholding for health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, and vision insurance to be calculated at the rate of 24 pay periods per year instead of 26 pay periods per year, with benefits to be withheld on the first and second pay periods of each month, to be effective for benefit withholding starting January 1st, 2023. Mr. Hafner.
Yeah, this is an initiative from our city clerk and deputy clerk regarding payroll administration and being more accurate with it. Molly got involved significantly as Mary Green resigned her position. So in the interim, Molly's been heavily involved and identified that there are occasions where perhaps an employee leaves employment with the city during a month where there was 3 deductions and ended up paying more than their fair share towards health insurance, or if they leave during a month where there's 2 deductions They pay a little bit more, less than their fair share. So Molly would like to improve the accuracy of that, and she did send out an email to all employees asking if there was any concerns, and she received no replies that there were any concerns. So the action would be to do all of the payroll deductions twice a month or 24 times per year as opposed to 26 times per year.
I'll make a motion to approve benefit withholding for health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, and vision insurance to be calculated at a rate of 24 pay periods per year, with the benefits to be withheld in the first and second pay periods of each month, to be effective for benefit withholding starting January 1st, 2023.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Sorry, seconded that? Okay.
We've been moving right along. You've been keeping up. That was the first one. Nicely done. Okay, 10D, discussion regarding options to address the complaints of speeding on Milwaukee Street as requested by Alderperson Valdy.
That would be me. I'm passing out little handouts because I am a teacher, and so a couple of things. This is certainly not a new problem. For the years that I've been on the Common Council, it's certainly something that has come up. One of the things I've discussed on more than one occasion with Chief Eric and others in City Hall is, the idea of speeding and how to address it. And it certainly isn't the only place in the city. There should be enough for clerk, yeah. So one of the things that struck me, and this was just in discussions with folks here and there over the last few months, is the definition of speeding. So, of course, I looked at just a Webster dictionary definition in applying it, because there can be many definitions to the word speeding or speed. In regards to motoring, it's really just traveling at a speed that's greater than the posted speed limit. In a logical situation, we ticket on a more rational level when it's more than that. And that's not really the point of the discussion. I have been on the city council for, this is going into my 10th year. It'll be completed in April. I have never had a single call, not one, from people who live on Main Street. Never. About speeding. But I get it regularly from folks on Milwaukee Street. Now, we can look at all the reasons why, but I think it's just something that has been an issue. Milwaukee Street, the housing density is more narrow. There are more people. We have a curve in the road that doesn't exist on Main, and people cross the road. So I thought, now that we're through the budget stuff, maybe we can look at this. I'm not asking for an action. I'm really asking for more of an addressing of the issue, and I'm happy to help or be a part of that. One of the things that struck me, no pun intended, is that when a car driving along hits a person on a bike or walking, the speed determines whether or not the person survives. Whether or not we think it's appropriate or what, doesn't matter. If you're hit by someone, there's a reason we have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I got all my stuff. There's a live link on, I can share the email with you. I got all my data really from AAA. It just came up more easily. But there are a lot of studies. If you're hit walking along the road, at 16 miles an hour, you have only a 10% a risk of serious injury. And I know you can read, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but the point is, the faster the speed, the more likely you are going to be severely injured. But one of the things I didn't know, and I learned, was the risk of severe injury or death for somebody who's older. 70 or older, if you're hit by somebody going 25 miles an hour, your risk of severe injury is similar to someone who's 35 and struck by a car going 35 miles an hour. So it's if the car's going faster but you're younger, you have a better chance of survival. That's not rocket science either. So the risk of death goes up appreciably as the speed goes up. So I combine that knowledge with the fact that a month does not go by where I do not get an email from somebody expressing concern. I know the city, and I think the folks who came this evening expressed it too. The city, our police department have done a lot of diligence to try to measure it and try to, digest the problem as is. My concern is that it still happens. I know I drive down Milwaukee Street. There's a rare day where I don't. I take it on my way home from work, partly just to remind myself where I live, because I get a great view of the lake, and I check out the birds. There's still some birds that should be migrating, but that's neither here nor there. I would like to consider that the city take an idea of a trial basis for one of the solutions. There are many that have been suggested. I really appreciated the one that was at Citizens Comments that's not here, and that is like a proper crosswalk, which may involve a single additional stop sign. It is I always know when people aren't from around the area, because if I'm going westbound on Milwaukee Street and I approach the main Milwaukee where there are cars stopped, if you live in the area, we all know to signal. We all signal, and then the cars wave and then they go forward because they know I'm not going to take that left up Main Street. But then there are people who aren't from around here, and they're like, why is that lady signaling right when there's no right turn? And there's that confusion, I think, especially when I hear about people crossing. So it might be something that we look at. Speed traps, saddling police officers, they've done that. It's more a question of what could we do that would cost not a lot of money, but might at least be worth a trial in problem solving. And before we go yes, no on any one of these, I'm happy to be a part of folks who want to maybe work on this, and then we can take it to our public works folks or whomever. I have also asked this to be at the traffic commission, but it's not a public meeting and I'm never invited and I don't have a voice there, and I'd like our folks to at least be a part of the discussion. So that's really what I wanted to do, is just bring it up to us now to sort of talk about what might we consider to help these folks on Milwaukee Street feel a little bit safer in their homes. And like they all said, we know we bought a house on a busy street. That's not the point. It's more a question of we could at least try. And so I'm happy to try to move forward with maybe even seeing if some of the folks on Milwaukee Street want to form an informal committee. Because I know I don't want to make anything I don't want to create more work for you, Tom. I don't want to create more work for the city, but I do want to keep this, keep visiting this until we come up with something that we can at least try, that we as a council feel is worth at least approaching.
So is there anything unique about Milwaukee Street as a collector street than any other collector street in the city that you perceive?
It's interesting. I think the density of housing, we have condos, we have a lot of houses that are, as somebody pointed out, like some of the right-of-way on some of those houses for the city goes through their living rooms. And that goes all the way to Lake. So it could be just how close some of the houses are. I just find it interesting because I have never had a call from Main Street, which you would think people go both ways, but it's Milwaukee Street where the concern is, and I don't know if folks just tool down it. I often think they're coming off the interstate and they might just, cut. I don't know why Milwaukee Street seems to garner the most speeders, but I get them because, trust me, I love those little blinky light signs that tell you how fast you're going, because I make sure I'm right at 25. And then I take it at 25 and I watch the cars pile up behind me. And I don't mind a bit. On one occasion, I had someone flashing their lights, and I just rolled up my window and I pointed at the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit as I went past it, and they kept flashing their lights. And the next thing I see was a squad car at Fishbones.
So what does and I appreciate the citizens' concerns.
Yeah.
I would want to know that these aren't anecdotal concerns, but backed by factual data. I assume there's been a radar sign there that's been collecting data for a certain amount of time?
There are. And again, I'm going back to, it's not my concern about whether or not they're technically speeding. It's more a question of how safe is it for people crossing the road? And I'm sure you've driven down Milwaukee Street, it curves. There are blind corners. I visit my constituents, often coming home from school, and I pull up their driveways, and then I'm turning around and trying to get out. And I think it's more that than speeding.
Okay, no, I can see that.
There's been a lot of data.
Matt, with regards to your question, we have had three. We have three data sets from the last 2 years. Each time the radar was out for a week at a time, and each time we have $15,000 to $18,000 data points.
There's a lot of data that's been collected.
And what is it, 90% or fewer are not speeding? I mean, that's been my understanding of the police. They're all speeding.
Everyone's going more than 25.
That's
my guess. I'm just guessing.
No, that's a good clarification.
So the industry standard is really the 85th percentile speed.
Thank you.
And that means that 85% of vehicles are going at or under this speed limit. And the three data sets, the 85th percentile speed was 32.9, 29.1, and 32.9. So that's to say that 85% of vehicles were going at or less than those speeds.
Right.
So the math doesn't tell us that the speeds are any different than what we would typically see on a collector street.
I think it's the narrowness of the road and the density of the houses and the number of people who are walking, which is a bigger concern. It is inhospitable to, as we've looked at, when the road was just recently resurfaced and we tried to, nip a little more off the edges to create a little more space for bikes and pedestrians. It didn't. I don't think it's possible without ripping out the telephone poles or to make the separated pedestrian path. So one of the suggestions that I had, and I don't know that anybody loves it, would be just to lower the speed limit.
Could I talk? I'm sorry.
That's right.
I've got a question on speed bumps.
No, I threw out a lot of things out there. Speed bumps. I've been a lot of times I say the snowplows can't get over them, but I drive in Madison and Cottage Grove, and they're all over the place, and I'm pretty sure they get snow there.
Yeah, I would think so too. I would have concerns about the snowplow. I would also have concern about the noise, right? Because you go over those and it's ba-bump, ba-bump.
Well, it depends on the
ba-bump, ba-bump.
speed bump.
And the proximity of those houses, they're going to hear those.
Thick ones, they're maybe, I don't know, a couple yards across. So they aren't a dunk-a-dunk. They are, you go up, and then you go down, and I think it makes it easier for the plow. I can take you right to the spot in Cottage Grove because I drove it so much, but it does slow the traffic down.
Okay.
I worry about emergency vehicles as one of the speakers in citizens' comments, which is why I think it might be something we bring up rather than, spend an hour. We're not going to solve it tonight, but I'm going to keep going at it just because it is the one thing that I get calls, and it's more those safety concerns.
Well, people are very passionate about that, not just in your district, but in,
Yes.
I think, all of our districts. And I'm not a huge fan of forming a subcommittee, but maybe there's an opportunity to gather some of those folks who consistently have concerns and brainstorm and have kind of community outreach with the police. So our law enforcement is hearing directly from those folks and can provide kind of immediate feedback.
I'll have to say that, so about 12 years ago when I was on Park and Rec, when I had my toe in the water, I was about to go into Public Works. My introduction to them was suggesting that we go to one-way traffic on a couple of these roads, and that was, I thought it was like this pioneering effort that was going to solve some problems, which would enable us to put in walking lanes or a bicycle lane without encroaching on people's public right-of-way. But it's something that was visited back in the early 80s. And I was soundly knocked down, cut off at the knees, let's say. And there's some issues with emergency vehicles for that. But then as you know, one of the things I helped advance on Public Works was getting the pedestrians, dog walkers, and the bicyclists, the cyclists are going to always go on the roads, the guys that are going 20 miles an hour on their tights and helmets and that. But on the dog walkers and the grandpas and grandmas walking their kids down to get an ice cream cone off the road, it was the most contentious thing I've ever dealt with on council and on Public Works, was suggesting that we put a path along the street. And then it came up again when we tried to get it from Fireman's Park to that point of Milwaukee and Maine. We're dealing with really difficult geography that dates back. I mean, I've got a map from 1873. And I think the road was put in, officially platted in like 1844, where that triangle was placed.
It was a store.
Was initially put in place, and so we're suffering from the fact that this city plat is 170 something years old, and that is a main road that's been there forever. That Milwaukee Street has been there before cars. So I'm with you. I mean, that's how I choose to go home. I choose to exit the expressway, heading west, to go down, so I can take a breather, and I drive 20. I'm going to say I drive 26. Okay.
And
but I'm a
24.
bumper. I like being a backstop to slow traffic down and just see how the community's doing and see if there's anything going on. And so I've been passed. I was passed by somebody who was agitated that they needed to get that 3/4 of a mile to downtown 4 seconds faster. I don't know how you combat that in any neighborhood around here.
It happens on Nagawicka Road, I can tell you
and
that.
That's
It's not frequent, but it happens.
It's really difficult to try to contend against people that are so brazenly rude and obnoxious to other people. And I'm not sure what to do. I mean, more signs I don't think is going to work. Like big yellow flashing signs. I like the speed signs. I mean, I think they do make people conscientious about the fact that they're doing something wrong.
And if you're lowering I've got a question. If you're lowering the speed limit from 25 to 20, do you think that's going to stop people from?
Well, so I'm not natural speed.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but I mean,
you can make it 10.
I did spend enough time, in Public Works and dealing with the experts, understanding that people drive the road; they don't drive the signs.
Yeah.
But when there's a sign that says, "Shame on you," and it's saying 25. And you're going 36. It's like, but there is an issue though with like the lack of our ability to extend that crosswalk to the point that would have enabled some crosswalks. I mean, the opposition to extending the off-road pedestrian path to the point towards Fishbones disabled our ability to create actual crosswalks. Because what was described earlier, it sounds like someone's trying to cross the intersection of Milwaukee and Maine, where the stripes are there for the stops, the stopping zones for cars. Those aren't crosswalks. There's no crosswalk there. There's no crosswalk between Fishbones and Fireman's Park.
Well, there's nowhere to go to.
Well, we tried to put some in, and it was vehemently opposed by everybody who owned property on the south side of that road.
Absolutely.
Minus maybe one person. And that that's a shame because we could have done it 5 years ago and we didn't. And so some of these things are, I'd be interested to hear what kind of suggestions come up, but I'd say deal with, get a couple people together with suggestions. I don't know about a formal committee, but with some suggestions and open the dialogue with Public Works. And
Okay.
I think there might be some good ideas.
I think the process, sorry to interrupt, but I think the process is to go to the traffic committee first. And then
It's been
traffic
there
committee
so many
refers to
We've done
Public
this.
Works, right? I'm just stating the formal process as I recall it.
Yeah.
For an individual, for a group, for an alderperson, it doesn't matter. It's the same process.
But I've had it sent there, I just never know when the meetings are, and then, so it's hard, and I get that it's hard to have them, that it would work, but
Jackie,
it's been to the traffic committee on more than one occasion.
The traffic committee is not a public meeting. It's staff developing their opinion to the Public Works Committee. It consists of myself, the police chief, and the city engineer.
Right.
It's intended to be apolitical and intended to be just very technical and straightforward from that perspective.
And how often do you get citizens show up or referrals on speeding?
How often do we?
Do you receive requests for
Oftentimes
action, discussion?
we'll compile maybe 2 or 3 complaints about something before we'll meet, and oftentimes we're meeting maybe about quarterly, maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
If there was something that came up, you'd meet if you needed to, right?
Correct.
That was, if you had 12 people calling you on the same thing, you'd set up a meeting.
For sure.
Well, and the traffic committee has met on this issue on more than one occasion, absolutely. So I'd be happy to maybe see if someone from Public Works wants to casually talk about it. I'm looking at your faces.
I'm not in Public Works.
I know that.
I don't like speed bumps from the noise and the snowplow thing, part of things. And I have no idea what it does to the longevity of a road if you put in permanent ones. But I mean, they make them out of rubber.
Not all of them.
No, but there's some. I'm just saying.
We're going to do a road trip.
No, but aren't there some that you can lay down and say, here's a speed bump, like hello, like right by the speed limit.
You could bolt something down, and if you wanted to, you could remove it during the winter.
That's what I mean. I'd be interested in seeing if that might have a positive impact where we don't bring the plows into it or the integrity of the road, and we bolt something down coming in and going out of the road.
Engage the fire and police department on any decision
just
like
a
that
thought.
before you did it.
And I will remind you, I think it was discussed previously that both Milwaukee Street and Main Street are categorized as collector streets, and that means they're supposed to move traffic as efficiently as possible.
At the regulated speed. Right?
Correct.
Or near to it.
Correct, but moving as efficiently as possible probably wouldn't include unwarranted stop signs or speed bumps and things like that typically.
But what's more
perhaps,
important, as...
What I was going to say is perhaps we would declassify Milwaukee Street.
That's not a bad idea.
So I'm going to say something that I'm concerned about. Does the traffic committee, do you guys believe it's a problem, speeding is a problem on Milwaukee Street? Or does your statistics tell you that it's not a problem, speeding is not a problem, the citizens are not they're not fairly representing that it is a problem?
Yeah, so the software that the police department has, when you put a set of data into it, it comes back with an enforcement rating, and it goes from high, medium, low, low. The 3 data sets that we have, one came back as low enforcement rating, and the other 2 came back as medium, low. And so we've identified it technically, data-driven, as not being a significant speeding problem.
So because of that, you haven't looked at any of these options as maybe being something to pursue? Like putting in the stop signs?
No, we have. We did run a stop sign at Negawicka Negawicka Street. Through the MUTCD, the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the warrants that exist to justify the installation of a stop sign, it did not meet the warrants for a 4-way stop sign. We have looked at speed bumps and recommended against them. There's a written recommendation on that that went to Public Works, and they concurred with that recommendation. So we have ran through the options that people have asked us to consider.
So,
And chose to do nothing.
Correct?
Tom, is it even an option to put in a roundabout where that Y curve is? I wouldn't think there'd be enough room for there, would there?
No, I saw that on Jackie's identification as a small traffic circle.
Well, they
and I
can make a
can't-
small
Tiny.
traffic
They're
circle.
tiny. They have them all over England. Trust me, and it's a very crowded. There are 60 million people in a place the size of half of Illinois. So I know they know how to put them in, and that is just something. There are ways to calm the traffic. I would submit that by the laws of physics, bumblebees can't fly, and so if we just look at the data, that bug can't fly, and yet it does. So we can look at data, and the data suggests that there's no problem on Milwaukee Street. But the people who live on Milwaukee Street, year in and year out for a decade straight, have contacted their city alderperson asking for help. And so I'm just asking for an opportunity to at least try something that isn't going to cost the city a ton of money or time, that just might mitigate this beyond the data points, make our citizens feel heard, but also to really see if maybe one stop sign at the, so that I'm not pushing any one agenda here, but the Milwaukee Main First Street, it's 3 out of 4 ways are stop signs. Why not just add a 4th? Make it an always stop, so it isn't the guessing game for the people who don't know where they are, just a sign that says always stop. That would not cost a ton of money, and it might help. Again, I think a lot of the folks who live on Milwaukee Street, they've been very polite and very persistent with their frustration. So I'm just trying to rep my piece.
So to do that, to put a stop sign, we'd have to redesignate Milwaukee Street as not a collector street, because that would slow down
Common
traffic.
Council can do whatever they want.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we.
You can just, without reclassifying, you can put a stop sign there. I think it would be more appropriate to reclassify first and consider the consequences and associated with that.
Yeah, before we made any kind of decision on any of these ideas, it needs to be, we need to as we make any decision in this community, we need to understand the pluses and minuses. Good decisions generally are not made because it feels good. They're made because they make sense. Mathematical, logical sense.
So option B, a stop sign, Milwaukee Street and Main Street. Are you talking about heading west, putting a stop sign?
as you approach
So how do you not?
This is not meant to be.
Yeah, no,
I'm just putting things out there because we keep saying it's not a problem, and yet I keep getting calls.
No.
Do we think that would reduce speeds up by Fireman's Park?
I don't know. I think some people are determined to speed no matter what. So do I think it's going to be the be-all to end-all? I don't know. I just think we need to do something. I would love to have a speed bump right near Fireman's Park, and then one on Milwaukee Street, or a little further down, getting closer to fish bones. Because I think folks need a double reminder. If I were, like waving a magic wand, that would be something I think might be, because that would literally slow you down. Like it does in Cottage Grove when my mom was still alive and I went to visit her. It was a, very sloped thing, and it looked like just like they packed up the asphalt, and it was a very gentle, but I'll tell you what, you could not fly over that thing, and it didn't make noise because it was so long, it was probably
Maybe that's
4
a
or 5 feet
table.
long.
I think they might call those a table.
Even
speed table.
Could be. That's a better description, Ken. It really is. But I hated it because I was always like wanting to get to see my mom. And but it did slow me and anybody else down. And so it might be a speed table that, definitely did the trick.
I wouldn't be opposed to having, I mean, they make them out of recycled rubber and they're different slopes. And I wouldn't be opposed to spilling some people's coffee or disrupting their texts if they want to slow down. I mean, if there's something we could recommend to look into.
I think a speed table is typically not a temporary thing that you put down, because it's, you go up and then you're up on top for, I don't know, 6 or 8 feet before you go back down again.
Yeah, that's exactly what I drove over.
And I can tell you, if you hit them too fast, you bottom out.
I'm suggesting.
I slow down.
You know, whatever.
But, you
I'd love to hear, I'll go to Public Works with you. How about that, Jackie?
Okay, I'm in.
And suggest a couple things, see what the experts, the DOT guys say.
Okay,
I'll
should
be
I
all for it.
contact Cottage Grove, see what they think? Like,
I want something we can roll out and take out if it doesn't work. Like you said, temporary, you know what I mean?
Okay, I'll go to, should we,
I'll talk to you.
yeah,
How about that?
okay.
Quick question. Just out of curiosity, the speed ratings throughout the city, high, moderate, low, and all the in-betweens. You characterize this road as low and moderate?
Low and medium low.
Low and medium low. Are you aware of any streets in the city that have been that are currently characterized at moderate or above?
Ooh, good question.
No.
Looking at the chief here, and he's saying no.
Do we know so the highest rated would be low moderate, I guess? My point.
Without looking at the data, my gut says
yes. Okay. So I guess I'm just thinking out loud on this, that maybe our standards are, maybe low moderate is the new moderate high. You know? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that Delafield standards are higher than the national averages. So just food for thought.
It sounds like the speed isn't the problem. The challenge is the amount of pedestrian traffic and the pedestrians needing to cross that road, not only going with the road, but crossing it. That makes this a special concern.
You do have municipalities like the village of Oconomowoc Lake that, you know, put the speed limit at 15 miles an hour for their main drag through the village.
We have one of those in the city, 15 miles an hour, right, Tom?
That's not a main drag, West Shore Drive.
They have a hard time going that speed even on that street.
Where is that?
West Shore Drive is, West Shore Drive, in the city? It's on the east side of or the west side of the lake.
That's 15?
Yeah.
Where's the 15? That's
where is it 15?
It's 15, yeah,
Yep.
Where is it 15? West Shore Drive, you said?
West Shore Drive, yep. I would encourage anyone to, if you're considering 15 miles an hour,
Try to do it.
Go on that road and try to stay at 15 miles an hour. Because when you're there's downhill parts, and you can't just idle. You got to brake to stay at 15 miles an hour.
I think there are multiple concerns, which is why this isn't simple. But I do appreciate, like, just discussing it. And Tim, if you want to.
I've identified it as an issue, even though my neighbors complained about going around their circle too, until you get the police out there and they start pulling over your own neighbors for speeding in their own neighborhood after they complained. But I recognize Milwaukee Street is somewhat unique because of the proximity of the park and the housing that's right there. And two, it's where people congregate for, like the park in particular, and 4th of July especially is interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't mind having mobile speed bumps to help alert people. I think I'd be interested to see what Public Works has to say about it.
We can communicate.
Will that force the speeders onto Main Street?
Yep, push them all there.
This way.
And then my phone will ring from the Main Street people.
Jackie, does fire and EMS use Milwaukee Street regularly?
I'm sorry?
Do fire and EMS use Milwaukee Street regularly? I would assume they use Main Street.
I thought they used Main, but I can't see them because I'm on Mill Street, so I hear them, and it could be Maine or Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I thought it was Maine more.
I would assume unless they're going to a location on Milwaukee Street, that if they're coming from our station, they would just continue down Main
Continue
Street.
down Main Street, yeah. But
And
yeah,
as you guys,
my vision, when I do catch them, I thought they were on Main. Because they would be much closer.
As you guys investigate this further, just be
We will.
cautious.
Thank you for the discussion.
You don't move the problem from one place just to another, right? And then.
Oh, exactly.
So I'm just mentioning it to be cognizant of it, that's all.
No.
All right. Sounds good. We are on to 10E, approval of vouchers payable report.
Move to approve the voucher list.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. 11A, City Administrator.
I've got no report this evening.
All right, no report from the City Clerk, no report from the City Treasurer. Other than October 2022 Treasurer's Report tax bill update. 2A, tax bills have been sent to the county for mailing and have been uploaded to the county website. Residents should start seeing bills the week of December 5th, 2022. Council requests for future agenda items. D, are there any? Otherwise, I will refer you to correspondence. Seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 8:36. Thank you, everyone.